When it comes to porn, a lot of guys just think they're using because they're just horny. But if pornography addiction was simply about having a high sex drive, you wouldn't find yourself reaching for it when you're exhausted after a long work day, or when you're feeling lonely on a Friday night, or when the stress from your career or just your work that day has you wound up all tight in the evening and you're not able to sleep. That pattern of emotional drivers reveals something very important, that you're not just horny. That's not actually what's going on here. You're actually trying to regulate your internal state.
That is such a powerful starting point, Caleb, because so many people fail to recognize what really drives this kind of compulsive behavior. But today we're pulling back the curtain on what is actually happening in the brain. Caleb here is an expert in the field, so I am going to ask him, and he's going to share with us some of his expertise here. So we're going to explore why willpower fails, why understanding porn as a coping mechanism called affect regulation, why this coping mechanism tool changes the entire recovery journey. And then at the end, he's going to give us some ideas of the deeper challenges that porn use might be medicating.
This is all like such a crucial understanding for lasting sobriety, for lasting recovery. So lots of people, by the time they get to my office, they've tried the blocking software, they've tried the accountability apps, and they still they find themselves back at square one. And the reason those tools often fail is because they address the behavior without addressing the function of that behavior. Like, what is the pornography doing? And if we don't understand that this whole thing with pornography addiction is almost always fundamentally what we call a maladaptive coping mechanism, that's an unhelpful way that the brain is trying to take care of something. If we don't understand that your brain is using that to manage emotional distress, then we're just trying to put out a fire that really has a constant source of fuel, and we're not dealing with the source that's behind it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive right in here.
Let's dive right in.
You've worked with a ton of men and women who are trying to quit porn, right? And from your experience and from research, you've said that porn is a maladaptive coping mechanism, right? And it's being used to regulate emotions. So I'm curious, can you unpack that for us, like in plain English?
I will try. So essentially it means that the porn use is the solution to a problem. And it's a solution to a problem quite often that the person doesn't know how to solve any other way. Think of it like a thermostat, right? So when your internal emotional temperature gets too high from stress, or when it gets too low from loneliness, your brain looks for a way to bring that temperature back to a baseline of feeling okay. And at some point in your life, pornography showed up as an easily accessible and very quick and also very intense neurochemical hit that numbs the pain or provides a temporary sense of excitement. So it can be used to take you down or take you up. And in those moments, like, that's not about being horny, even though, yeah, there's absolutely a sexual component to this. It's about the relief, though, that the porn and masturbation brings to your overall sense of well-being. That's the shift. That's what we mean by emotion regulation. It helps you feel okay again. Or supposed to.
So while it's certainly hard for a betrayed partner to see this, this often develops like a survival strategy, right? Like, it's like the brain is saying, I can't handle this feeling of being overwhelmed, so I'm going to reach for the most reliable tool I have so I can feel better fast.
Yeah, exactly. So for many, like, you might have noticed this started very early in life. If someone grew up in an environment where you were not taught how to process big emotions, or even to name them or what to do with them, or if you experienced trauma, like, your brain had to find a way to navigate through that, had a way to survive those difficult moments in life. And one day that pain met the excitement and the high of the hit that pornography brings. And pornography is like so available, and it's relatively private, like you can get it secretly or by your alone, right? And it's effective in the very short term. It actually, like, it does work for pain relief, but pretty soon a person figures out that the painkiller, and you've probably figured this out too, is actually a pain causer. Or it perpetuates the pain, or at the very least metabolizes the pain into shame and disconnection from, like, the most important person in your life, usually your partner, your spouse, that kind of thing, right? Or just family, if you're single, or friends, like you're just alone and you're at home and you're looking at porn and it feels sucky. So the cost is that it creates a cycle of shame, which then creates more negative emotion, more disconnection in your life, loss of time, these other consequences of addiction, which leads back to more use to numb that shame. And then boom, you have an addiction. That's how that happens.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the quick fix aspect of what you just said there. So when we talk about affect regulation, are we really talking, we're really talking about neurochemistry,
Yeah,
I think
it's
here,
all tied
right?
together.
So what's actually happening in the brain when someone transitions from this stressful meeting to looking at porn
Yeah.
or stressful day or whatever?
Stressful day, whatever it might be.
Help us understand.
Well, what is happening? We're looking at like a massive flood of dopamine that happens, and what they call endogenous opioids like endorphins and enkephalins, the parts or the neurochemicals in your brain that normally help you to feel better about stuff. Some of them are like literal sort of internal painkillers that are built into our nervous system. So dopamine is what drives like the seeking or the wanting, the desire. And then those opioid items that we mentioned, those are about the liking or what we call the satiety. I don't actually use that word very much in real life, but that's like the reward and numbing phase, where like the reward of using the numbing of the feeling, the benefit of the hit comes back to you, the actual painkill.
Okay.
And those things together is like this powerful cocktail that effectively hijacks the reward system in the brain, takes over the reward system in the brain. And in that moment, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for logic, for being aware of long-term consequences and facing those, essentially goes offline. So we're not aware of that stuff. And then the midbrain or the limbic system takes over for you. Now your nervous system is just looking to get back to feeling better or feeling okay again. It's what we call homeostasis. I'm okay, back to level ground. So if you're feeling difficult emotions, and in our therapy world, we use the word affect sometimes to talk about emotions. So we talk about negative affect, which means feeling things that are hard. Okay.
Difficult.
So, difficult. If I have negative affect, which is just a clinical term for things like anxiety or distress, your brain perceives those difficult feelings as a threat to your well-being. They're not, they're a problem. They have to be taken care of. Oh, look, pornography, that's a chemical Band-Aid that I can use to mask that threat, to take care of those negative feelings. See how that kind of comes together?
So when people say they're on autopilot and they're not actually thinking, like they actually are on autopilot.
Quite literally, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Yeah. So their logic center has been bypassed by this like hijacked survival mechanism.
Yeah. And survival might seem drastic, but it's a mechanism that was intended to be used for survival in very difficult situations, but it's just been used now in another way in the emotional world.
Right.
Where things still feel threatening.
You might not be physically in danger, but emotionally it feels dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And that's why willpower too, Verlynda, in all of this, that hijack thing that you're talking about, that's why that's so like ineffective for just stopping permanently. Like willpower will take you a certain distance.
Okay.
With the white knuckling we talked about a couple videos ago. But your brain like you can't just will yourself out of this neurochemical survival response once it's fully triggered. Like you need more than that. Once those neural pathways are in place that take you from pain to relief and you're running down them, it's not easy to stop defaulting to that coping mechanism. It's really hard. What you end up having to do over time is to learn to identify and then regulate those emotions, to know what the pain is, to be able to name that pain, and have other strategies that you're learning now to take care of that pain before that old default neural pathway takes over.
Kicks in again. Yeah.
Kicks in again.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of work to get out in front of this.
Yeah. Okay. So this leads us then into like the practical side of this. With your clients and in your presentations, you talk about the HALT-B method.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate and like walk us through what those letters stand for, how someone can actually like put them into play in their life?
I'd love to do that. So HALT+B is an acronym that helps you to check in with your internal state before you act on an urge. Okay. So if you feel the urge to use, it's like, okay, I got to stop and go through HALT-B. And usually most people just know HALT, and I've added the B in my work because it's significant. So I'll tell you what that is in a second.
Okay.
It'd be cleaner just to have HALT, but the B is important. So we'll get there.
Right.
So the H stands for hungry. And this might sound very simple, but physical hunger is a stress on the body that lowers our threshold for frustration. And again, most of the time in this work, I'm working with men, and men in our culture are just not raised to think about self-care. They're not socialized for that. Okay. And so sometimes we feel hunger and we don't think about how to thoughtfully take care of that hunger. So even though this might seem super rudimentary, physical hunger, that becomes a stressor. It lowers your threshold for frustration, so you can't handle stuff as well. Okay, we talk about being hangry. And when we're physically depleted, our brain is more likely to seek a high energy reward, like a dopamine hit.
Right.
So that's how this kind of plays over into that. I mean, you can do you know about angry.
What do you mean by that? Wow.
I just mean you're familiar with anger.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted on like the eating part.
Yeah.
But you can also see how like a porn addiction can turn into like an eating addiction.
Yeah, I mean, you can...
If you're using that now to numb the feelings.
Yeah. I've had guys tell me, I've switched to a lot of candy. I've quit the porn and I'm using candy.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, let's work on that too. So we're just noticing that.
Just noticing. Yeah. Okay. But you're right. A is for angry. Yes. So I imagine this can include things like resentment.
Yeah.
Just feeling irritated.
Yep.
By people, by situations, by a work partner.
Yeah. Yeah. And anger is like an activating emotion, right? Like it turns your nervous system on and it creates, it creates energy, as you would have noticed. It creates energy in the body that can feel very uncomfortable. So for many people, they use porn to calm down or a place to vent that pent up energy in a way that feels safe because it's solitary and maybe it's like towards a screen. So lots of times, we can't resolve what we're angry about either, right? In life.
Okay.
Like
I went to relationship, but yeah.
What's that?
I went to relationship in my head.
Yeah.
Like if I'm scared I'm going to blow up at you and then my relationship's in danger, it's easier to kind of go solitary and vent it out over here.
Yeah. I mean, that's another way it can go. It can go lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing of eroticized rage, which we're not getting into today, but there's a lot of ways that anger can go. But porn becomes, regardless, it becomes an effective distraction.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in the addiction.
Effective for what?
Immediate short-term pain relief.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I tell my guys, it works. And then the end is the consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it works in the short term.
Works in the short term and it leaves you with shame.
Mm-hmm.
Other difficult feelings, which you have to go medicate the shame later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it still leaves you feeling lonely or... Yeah.
But I think we still have to acknowledge that there is a short term. There's a reason why your brain went to this thing, right? So
it makes sense.
That's why I say that. Then there's the L for lonely, and that's a massive one, of course, and super prevalent in our culture. Loneliness is interpreted by the brain in many ways. If you think about it, it can be interpreted as a physical safety risk, especially if you came across loneliness a lot as a child. Like we're very social creatures, and when we feel disconnected from the world around us or very alone in that world, we feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. And like we won't be seen, we're becoming invisible. That's threatening. That raises alarm in our nervous system. And the pseudo connection of porn, because it's hitting some of those same relational circuits that your brain is wired for in real relationships, it mimics that feeling of being seen or desired. Even if it is just a hollow imitation, it's still hitting nervous or neural circuits that exist. And so what makes this even more challenging for recovery is a lot of people don't even recognize that they're feeling lonely. They don't recognize the loneliness, right? They just kind of have an ache in their chest and they think, well, I must be horny. They don't stop long enough to think about why they're turning to porn in that moment. And that's really where we're going in this video, is to think about why.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the T is for tired.
Yep.
And B, I'm going to spill your beans here.
Okay.
B is for bored.
Yeah.
And these feel like more end of the day triggers for people possibly?
Yeah, I think so. Quite often. Being tired means your executive function, like your higher thinking, is at its lowest, right? At that point, especially if it's the end of the day, you don't have the mental gas in the tank to go to the gym or to go for a walk or put together like a healthy salad or reach out to a friend maybe. Easier just to look at porn. That's kind of how it goes, right? So we want our clients to get really good at noticing that tiredness and begin to choose rest options. And I sometimes will get right into sleep hygiene and that kind of thing, so that we actually begin to restore our bodies and take care of like both like having long-term healthy sleep trajectory, like we're getting towards getting rested there. But even in the short term, like if you're tired, like feel the tiredness, take a little nap. Sit down for 20 minutes, watch something mild on TV or YouTube.
Not
that is
adrenaline-inducing.
Yeah, going to leave you feeling restored or something. So that your brain has a better alternative to turn to. That's the start of the shift, right? And then boredom, the HALT-B for boredom is often just a mask for like understimulation in your life or a fear of being alone with your thoughts, back to the loneliness feeling. So if you can stop and ask yourself in these moments when you're thinking about pornography or you're beginning to notice your brain is starting to have the temptation or run down those circuits of the way you move towards pornography, just stop and say like, okay, am I actually just hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or bored? And in that moment, when you do that, you create this little gap of awareness. And that little gap is where you begin to plant the seeds of recovery, and recovery can live in there because now if you know what you're feeling, you can think about what you want to do about that feeling. That's a profound, it's so small, but it's such a profound shift. Yeah.
I just like watching you when you're like so passionate about something.
Oh, I get excited about this stuff.
I know.
Because it works. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do love that. Like the gap is where recovery lives.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you can relate to that feeling of being on autopilot, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Like which of these HALT+B triggers do you find is your biggest challenge? Or is it another feeling or awareness? Like what helpful ways have you found to take care of these feelings instead of porn? And I feel like that's a big ask, but if you feel comfortable sharing, like please let us know. It helps everyone in this community realize that they're not alone in this.
Yeah, which is super powerful.
Yeah.
Super powerful.
So Caleb, I want to move into like a deeper and perhaps more sensitive area here. We can't talk about affect regulation without talking about where we learn to regulate in the first place, right? So the next layer below these emotions we've been discussing are attachment wounds and childhood trauma. So why is this central to understanding porn addiction? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, and I think this is the heart of the why, Verlynda. So starting with attachment, that's the science of how like relational bonds are formed.
Yeah.
Like how we bond with other people. Mainly, we're concerned about the bond between a child and their caregiver and how that informs the way that I bond with my significant other as an adult, and to a secondary degree to close friends or very close friends, right? So as young children, like we rely on our primary caregivers to help us regulate our emotions. That's a very scientific way of saying like a parent picks up a crying child and comforts it.
Yeah.
They pick up the baby and they hold the baby. But when they do that and they like doing this thing and soothing the baby, that's called co-regulation, because the parent who is mature, I should say, and can move in this world with strength and presence, downloads that certainty and that calmness to the child that just got an owie, or to the baby that's hungry or has gas pain or whatever, and co-regulates, and the baby learns that it can soothe itself. So toddler gets hurt, maybe mom, maybe dad acknowledges and soothes, and the child begins to learn, I can turn to others for comfort. And I begin to learn, oh, I had a difficult emotion, I got upset there, and I turned to someone, and that was soothed. That was calmed. Now, if a child grows up in an environment that is emotionally neglectful or is just inconsistent in how that care or soothing is provided, or if it's outright abusive or dangerous, they never learn how to self-soothe themselves or how to reach out for co-regulation to another person in a healthy way. The brain doesn't get programmed with, man, I had a tough day. I need to call my good friend and just chat this out with you.
Right. If
Right?
there's been an attachment
If those deficiencies
disorder. Yeah.
have interrupted that caregiving process in childhood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So because they don't know to do that and they don't know how to do that because it wasn't defaulted for them through consistency by caregivers, their nervous system remains now in a high state of arousal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's hyper aroused. It's on high alert. And when that child then becomes a teen and then a young adult, and they're still carrying that whole dysregulated nervous system that didn't learn these things, they're essentially looking for something outside themselves that they missed that can regulate this, that can help me to calm this problem or this thing that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. And so then pornography becomes that thing.
Yes. Yeah. That discovery just matches that thing one day.
Right. Because they have this need, this longing.
Yeah. Even if it didn't get met, it's still there.
Yeah. So then it's a way to turn down the volume on that.
Yeah.
Whether it's deep-seated anxiety or the overwhelmed nervous system.
Yeah.
And it just meets that need so exactly. The pain of not being seen or loved as a child.
Yeah. Not having your feelings noticed and responded to.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for many individuals who struggle with pornography, we see a history of what we call insecure attachment, which again, this is about the bond that develops, right? So this means that early in life, and this might be the case for you, it might not be the case for you, it's not 100% for all porn addicts, but for many, they learned that people are not safe or reliable or available sources of comfort. There's some little rule in there or large rule that says, I have to take care of myself if I'm going to feel better. Or I can't turn to others.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And if people aren't safe, your brain is going to look for something that is, because you need a source of safety to go to. And then one day you discover pornography, and pornography feels safe in the sense that it's predictable. It's always available. It never rejects you. Right? It's consistently there. And the scripting in pornography tells you that you're wanted, that you're validated. It provides the same feelings of being soothed, and it becomes a substitute for the real relational intimacy that either feels too threatening or it feels out of reach to you.
Yeah. So it's almost like self-medicating for this wound that happened decades ago.
Exactly. It's exactly that. And that's why just focusing on the behavior, like the stop using porn part, often fails if that's all you do. If you don't get to these underlying attachment wounds, you're still going to be walking around with a nervous system that is screaming for safety, that wants a place to land, to find soothing, to find comfort. And you'll eventually find another way to numb that pain if you don't learn how to build secure attachments and how to regulate those emotions that are happening in your internal world. And this is why both learning emotional literacy and addressing attachment disturbances has to be part of some porn addicts' recovery journeys in order for them to get into a deeply grounded, well-established sobriety and experience healthy intimacy, like growth into that area in life.
Yeah. Then we're going to throw something else in here.
Yeah.
Because then there's trauma, especially childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And if untreated, it lives in your body as anxiety and stress.
Yeah. And that's why trauma therapy is so vital here too. So again, not every person addicted to porn has trauma that is a root that's part of the addiction. But if you've been struggling for longer or finding it harder to quit, that's when you start looking into these areas of attachment or trauma, okay? With trauma therapy, this is the idea of like you have to go back to the roots to change the fruit. If your nervous system is dysregulated, again, as a child or a young adolescent, and you learn that you can turn to substances or to behavior like pornography and masturbation to regulate feelings of anger and shame and pain, then your brain is going to latch on to that easy accessibility anytime that you're distressed. So now what has happened though is your brain has rewired the reward system of a stable, committed relationship onto like the terminals of an addictive behavior that delivers a quick fix to you. So in more entrenched cases of pornography addiction, we don't see a reliable sobriety established until the traumas at the root of the addiction are treated. And that's deep work, and it can take time, but it results in very, very deep, well-established sobriety as well.
Yeah. So does every porn addict have trauma?
No, not every porn addict has trauma.
And I think that's something important to remember, because there are some books out there that is like, well, it comes from this. And then they're like, I don't have trauma in my life. And then it's almost more of a shame thing of like, what's wrong with me?
Now, some people get like bored and lonely in high school, or they fall out of their circle of friends a little bit. And then this thing is there and they get kind of sucked into it because it's addictive in itself.
Okay.
And they really didn't have any major childhood trauma, and maybe their parents just got a little bit busy. You know what I mean? So there's not huge family of origin stuff. And we would typically see, like in therapy, that those folks would get into a well-established recovery within a matter of weeks. Like it happens much faster.
Okay.
And I think like, well, I know like some people can quit by themselves without therapy, right? But if it's, like I say, if it's lingering, or you're just having trouble really getting out ahead of this thing, or having it stick and not extending your relapses to like once a month or once every 3 months, that's like, okay, let's look for deeper roots.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be trauma, but it can be trauma.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So let's pivot here now to some common challenges and solutions. So we already talked about emotional self-awareness, but there are hurdles that come up for almost everyone. So let's start, Caleb, with unmet emotional needs.
Yeah. So I've talked or alluded a little bit to this, to feelings, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. And it's often the first hurdle. People realize they're lonely or distressed, but they don't know how to fix that or what to do with that. And so I mentioned at the start, I love the phrase that porn is a maladaptive coping mechanism. Yes, it sounds like big words, but the flip side is like you want an adaptive coping mechanism. Because just because you get sober, it doesn't mean that life won't ever throw curveballs at you.
Yeah.
Or that you won't come home stressed from work again.
Yeah.
So you need healthy alternative coping mechanisms, right? And so we work on things like deep breathing. Sometimes it's going for walks, but it also means like intentionally building something like a connection plan. If you're lonely, the solution is not just not using porn. It's actually going to be calling a friend or joining or finding a community. So you have to fill the void for what you're taking porn out of with something substantial, something that's better than pornography. When I say better, I don't mean a higher hit, because you probably won't find that, but something that is more deeply satisfying, which porn does not deliver. And I always say to my addicts that the brain will continue with the current reward until it finds a better one. So we have to find it a better reward.
Yeah. Okay, so like what about the shame spiral? Like, can you help us understand that feeling of like, I failed again, so I might as well keep going?
Yeah. So that's another common challenge here. And shame, of course, is a fuel for addiction. It's important to learn that shame is counterproductive for recovery. Shame doesn't help you get sober, so you can't shame yourself into being a better person. The solution that actually works here is self-compassion. So we have to learn to treat ourselves like we would treat a friend who is struggling that we care about, right? When you slip up, so instead of saying, I'm a piece of trash, I screwed up again, you say, you know what? I was overwhelmed. I reached for an old coping mechanism. What do I need to learn from this? This is kind of a very basic example of like the start of self-compassion.
Yeah.
But that shift helps stop the spiral that leads to shame, to more acting out, to more medicating.
Like curiosity instead of the shame. Yeah. So another common thing we see is like isolation or all or nothing thinking.
Yes. Yeah. Talked a little bit about loneliness. Like, yeah, the isolation is hard. Addiction compounds those feelings, feeling like I'm the only person who's struggling with this in my church or in my school or my class or whatever. But the only real answer is to begin to do the hard work here of picking up neglected relationships or forming new healthy friendships. Getting into a recovery group like Pure Desire can be good, because having that sense of like, wow, like there's other people out there with the same struggle as me, that's massive for reducing that feeling of being the only person who's struggling or feeling uniquely wrecked or shameful or bad, right? And then for the all or nothing thinking, we want to start looking for like incremental progress. We're looking for like a recovery trajectory, not an instant and bulletproof sobriety. So if you used to use 5 times a week and now it's once a month, that's massive progress. We're going to celebrate that win. Yes. Yeah, we do want to help you get to your final goal of sobriety, but have self-compassion for the struggle, for the journey, have gratitude for the progress that has been made.
I like
that. Helps you get out of that all or nothing thinking as well.
Yeah. And then that sounds like at that point, we're moving towards like healing the root. We're not just managing symptoms anymore, but like healing what's been wounded.
That's exactly right. That's the thrust of all of this. If you only focus on the porn, you're just managing a symptom. If you focus more on how you handle your emotions, think about the isolation that's crept into and overtaken your life, the stinking thinking that has developed, your own personal history, things that need to be healed from your childhood maybe, or from young adulthood, then you're healing the whole person. And that's where this whole thing begins to work much better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important shift away from like, I'm just horny to like, okay, there's actually all these layers beneath this addiction.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So valuable to consider that. So to wrap up today, I want to emphasize again, like your brain has been trying to accomplish something. It's been trying to help you survive emotional distress and attachment pain and maybe unresolved trauma. And porn helped you get to this point in your life. But you can find better solutions now, solutions that leave you feeling healthier, more authentic, more in line with your own values, ready for real connection and healthy intimacy, rather than carrying more secrets and more shame in your life.
Yeah. If you're ready to explore those deeper solutions and want professional support to navigate this journey, please know that our team at Therapivo is here for you. We're available over Zoom wherever you are, and we specialize in these intersections of addiction, trauma, and emotional health. You can visit therapivo.com to learn more about our approach. And as we mentioned earlier, there's a link in the pinned comment where you can book a free 20-minute consultation. It's a very low-pressure way to start the conversation about your healing.
And remember that talking about these things and seeking understanding and also just being willing to ask for help, this is exactly how we begin to normalize therapy, especially for issues like this. So let's keep getting that message out there together. If you would like to, please like this video, please share it with a friend so we can spread that message around.